quintessential small college football game and atmosphere.
The most unique rivalry in college football anywhere.
There's a ravine that runs through our campus, across the street, and then through the middle of Washington's campus, and that's where the ravine comes from.
Nowhere else in the world there's two universities in the same conference, same division, get to walk across the street and play each other.
Back in 1951, we played Washita at the old stadium. We beat them 54-0. And after that, they quit playing us.
I think it's great to have two universities if the competition is good and friendly, as I always thought it was between Henderson and Washita.
We've been competitors in athletics for many, many years, and of course when I played here, we always played that the very last game of the season, and it's just a unique competition that goes on in the state of Arkansas and the nation for that matter, with two colleges where you're just across the street from one another.
One of the most unique rivalries in all of the country, in all of college athletics. Two universities separated by 20 feet. There's nowhere else in this country where you can go and have two universities as close as we are to Washita and vice versa.
Where else in the country does the road team walk to a road game? We're not even talking a bus. We're talking the state troopers stopping traffic on US Highway 67 and the other team coming across.
You know, this is one of the most historic college football games, I think, in all of college football. It's one of those contests that is so unique because of the two institutions being right across the ravine from one another, and where the visiting team actually walks to the game.
You can sit in the home stands in one stadium and see the stadium of your rival. It's really true in Arkadelphia. I don't know other situations where that's true. How many other rivalries does the visiting team actually walk back to their own field house? It just doesn't happen in other rivalries. I think it's one of the things that makes it very, very special.
You know, Ohio State and Michigan have a great rivalry, and Auburn and Alabama and so forth, but they're still several hours away from each other. They don't have to live with the other, you know, and every day of the week see those people. And if you've won, you have bragging rights. If you lost, and of course you try to avoid them at all costs, I guess.
People will say it's just another game, but it's not just another game. And the reason is that you're in town with them, you know them, you know. And so the intensity is there. It's like a family thing. If you compete against your brother or your sister, that's intense. And those people, you see them every day, and after the game, you have to go into the restaurants, and there they are grinning like a possum if they beat you, you know. And so you don't want that to happen.
Henderson wins are on the red and the gray. Washita's wins are on the purple and the gold. And you see that in 2007, Washita got a big 0 to our 18. So at the end of each game, the football goes to the winner.
News and TV stations, you know, recognize that there's something even more unique about this. You know, the fact that you've got what used to be a Methodist school and what is a Baptist school, and there is a street that separates them, and competition is just continuous and ongoing, you know, from trying to admit more students to athletic contests, to libraries, to, you know, faculty, whatever. It's just very unique.
The ravine is a hole. I mean, it's a depression in the ground that separates the two campuses.
At one time, it was the Battle of the Ravine, literally. Now it's a battle of Highway 7, I guess, because now a highway street separates us.
Well, it runs right through our campus, and then it runs right through their campus. So it actually, you have to cross over the ravine to go over there.
It starts up here in the parking lot by Smith Dorm. That's the beginning of the ravine, and that little creek that runs down across the Smith Dorm parking lot into the creek that runs through the middle of Henderson's campus, goes underneath the street and goes towards Washita's campus. That ravine continues and deepens and widens on Washita's campus more so than our campus, That creek, though, runs all the way down to the Washita River. So there is the ravine. So the ravine actually splits both campuses. It's not between the two, but it splits Henderson's campus down the middle and also kind of Washita's campus down the middle. But it starts on our side and goes through Washita's side.
In fact, it was my senior year that we had a work day and cleaned out the ravine.
Basically, the ravine is filled with weeds and a lot of kudzu. I guess that gives it a nice southern touch to have the kudzu growing there down in the bottom of that ravine. If you go hiking in it, probably be a good place in the summer to be bitten by a snake. Yeah, well, they stopped playing because the pranks got a little too wild. If you look at old photos, you know, there was a lot of heads shaved. You know, if you were a Washita student caught on the Henderson campus or a Henderson student caught on the Washita campus, you're likely to have the other teams either an H or an O cut in your head.
And the tradition then, once we captured a ready during that week, we would take them to the dorm and shave their head and leave an O in the top of it. Of course, if they caught one of our guys, they would shave their head and leave an H in the top of it.
Well, the rivalry was great. Henderson probably had a little better team than Washita at that time, and the rivalry was fine. And of course, they were always the underdog. And let me tell you, they gave us all we wanted. They played hard.
Folks talk about some of the rivalry of the 1950s. I think we actually stopped the rivalry for a few years because there was actually some violence.
I mean, it got to be a bloodbath, you know.
And there were a few times they had a little fisticuffs down there in the ravine. That's the reason they called it the Battle of the Ravine. Fortunately, I never was in on that either.
There was one game in the 50s where we were leading 14-0 with about 2 minutes to play, and Washita scored 17 points to beat us in the last second. So, you know, things like that stay with you.
The pranks got to be dangerous. They were doing things that, I think one of the last things happened, they kidnapped the Washita homecoming queen. Henderson students did, and took her to Hot Springs.
There was the quote-unquote kidnapping of the late Ann Strickland that everybody talks about, who later became Ann Vining when she was taken, a friendly kidnapping, if you can imagine such a thing, by some people she knew, but hid out at a lake house in Hot Springs the year she was Washita's homecoming queen by some Henderson students. But then I think it got into a little more, too much painting, too much rock throwing and so forth, which is why the series ended during the 1950s.
I think they got the FBI involved with that because the Washita people didn't know where she was. And the Henderson students were, we got her, you know. And they found out just before the game that it was more serious than they thought it was. But I don't think anybody's arrested, but it scared people and it caused them to say, well, you know, we better not play anymore.
Back several years ago in the early days of this competition, the pranks took on a turn that they became more than mischief. They were doing physical harm to the campuses with paint and windows broken, this type of thing. So at a period of time there, the competition was stopped.
People were getting beat up and whatever, so they just stopped playing for a while.
But the first contest where we was actually either going to play football or basketball was basketball in '63. And we were going to play at their gym. And their gym at that time was just an old cracker box gym, you know, wooden, had a stove up in the stands. And so we knew they wasn't going to hold everybody, so we got there early. I was one of the first few in lines. And we waited about an hour, and they still hadn't let us in. So somebody, it wasn't me, tore the front door off the hinges, and finally they let us go in. Well, the place was completely packed, and you couldn't even take the ball in out of bounds because people were, you know, all around the sides. It was really a dangerous situation in that old wooden building. But anyway, Washita was the #1 team in the league, and we were, you know, below the middle of the pack. We were probably 5th, 6th, something like that. But we led the whole game, And they came back and tied us right in the end of the game, and they fouled one of our players, and as time expired. So he goes to the line to shoot free throw to win the game if he makes it. Well, he misses it, and they had a little guard, kind of a cocky kid named David Kossover, great tennis player too. And when he missed it, he went over there and patted him on the tail and said, "Nice shot." Well, when that happened, we had a fullback named John Jagger, a big old kid, about 25, 26, been in service. He came out of the stands and cold cocked Kossover. He slid on his butt all the way to the sideline. And when that happened, I mean, it was just everybody. I mean, just a riot out there.
We didn't play for 10 years. And when we started back, we were sitting over there, the football team, a bunch of us at Washita the night before the game, and nobody had pulled a prank. So we said, let's go paint our tiger. And somebody said, "Oh, let's don't paint it, let's put a sign on it." So we made up a sign, and we knew that the ROTC guys were guarding it. And so sure enough, when we got over there to put the sign on it, they started chasing us, and they caught all the football players that were involved in the deal except me and one other guy.
Occasionally, we would gather up at the fountain down here, and there was a red light at that intersection back years ago. And we'd have the Henderson students on one side of the street and the Washita students, and when the light was such that the traffic had to stop, we would throw eggs at one another. And then when the light changed, we'd stop so the traffic could go by. I guess a prank we tried to play on them, we tried to paint the tiger. And at one time, that tiger had a tail. And that tiger no longer has a tail.
The marshmallows, yes, I remember when they were dropped on the out in front of their student center, all these red and gray marshmallows, just came from nowhere. It was just like, you know, the heavens opened and God in his red and gray shirt just released these marshmallows.
Our aviation department's kind of unique, and they just took the opportunity to, the week of the game, to bomb them with some red and gray marshmallows. And I tell everybody that next week they came over and dropped hot chocolate on us, but that's not true.
I think we took turnip seeds and put in their baseball field, HSC. We were Henderson State College. Well, no one knew that we had done that particular damage until the grass and the turnip greens grew up, and there was HSC in the
in many dressing rooms where the players have left their scouting reports. And you ought to see what typically if you draw a Wonder Boy or a tiger or a bison, and put it on your scouting report. But when you put that radio on there, it's like, a lot of times it'll be an Indian or it'll be a ghost or whatever. But we don't actually have a concrete representation of an icon. We're just the Ready Spirit.
There's lots of explanations of what a Ready is, but the best explanation I had was one of my old football coaches. And his name was Coach Donaldson, Charles Donaldson, and he's a dear friend of mine, but he would tell you that a Henderson Ready is not a floppy-eared old mule, it's not a mangy old bear, it's not a scraggly old tiger, it's not a wee weevil like in Monticello. It's right here. It's in your heart. That's what a Ready is.